Hey, this is Professor Gerding coming at you with some psychology of personality, talking about Sigmund Freud. Doing this in the comfort of my own home, so you may hear my wife walk in and out of the room and some dogs in the background. It just means it's authentic, man. So just take it as a cool sign of your professor keeping it real. I guess that's my excuse I'll stick with. But let's get into Freud. This is just going to be a PowerPoint presentation with me talking over it as if we're in class. So don't expect anything too graphically fancy and that jazz. Plus, I'm using a free program to do it, and the program only lasts for 10 minutes. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of these videos about Freud, each of which about 10 minutes. I already forgot to start the timer, so this one might be cut off all of a sudden. But let's get into this. Sigmund Freud, the most infamous name in all of psychology. Yeah. Why so infamous? Well, we're going to learn that because throughout these videos, we're going to learn about the life of Sigmund Freud and what happened in his past. Because normally a good essay question for test on Sigmund Freud is how did his past influence his theories? Because it's really obvious in a lot of ways. For instance, he only had female clients, patients, and he had a whole bunch of sisters, so that may have something to do with it. Most people think so. Then we're going to talk about his idea of instincts. This is the idea that we're only motivated by two things. He originally said we're only motivated by one thing, ooh la la, but then he added something else on later in his life. So we'll talk about the ooh la la and instinct. And then we're going to talk about his pieces of personality, almost as if there's three parts to who you are. One being the id, then the ego, then the superego. Then we're going to talk about anxiety. Anxiety is important in Sigmund Freud's theory. Anxiety, according to Sigmund Freud, is when the unconscious starts to become conscious. We'll talk more about that. And then we're going to talk about the defense mechanisms. And this is interesting because it's not really Sigmund Freud's forte to talk about defense mechanisms. No, that's Anna Freud. Who the hell was Anna Freud? We'll talk about that too. And then we're going to go to the oh-so-famous psychosexual stages. Man, that's going to be a good video too. So each one of these sections, by the way, is probably going to be a different video. I doubt I'll be able to cover all of the really rich history of Freud in a single 10-minute video, but the others I'll try to get into single 10-minute videos. We're going to talk about questions of human nature really quickly a little bit, but then also how did Freud assess his clients? And then some research on Freud. Was he just a quack? Is there any truth empirically to what he was researching? And then we'll also talk about some of the extensions of Freudian theory as it is today. But let's begin the history of Sigmund Freud. Oh, there's my little pixel Sigmund Freud. I'll do that again because I drew that and I'm just showing off my pixel art. Boop. All right, let's go into it. The life of Siggy Freud. Once upon a time, there was a boy. He was born. He was the eldest, but kind of not really. Because he was born on May 6, 1856 in Moravia, but that's even an item of contention. Because some people suggest that he was born in March 6, which means that his mother was probably pregnant with him before the marriage. All this drama stuff, but you don't need to worry about that because we don't really know. But the idea is he was born in 1856. Victorian era stuff. How do you do? Fine and very well, thank you very much. Top hats, canes, Victorian era, keep that in mind. And they moved to Vienna, Austria when only 4 years old. And I'm going to talk about his mother and his father in a bit here. His father was an unsuccessful wool merchant, and Freud described him as an authoritarian parent. If you don't know what an authoritarian parent is, that's the parenting style that has a whole bunch of rules and you're really strict without a whole bunch of love involved. I think of it as like Conan, the authoritarian, a barbarian who only beats and yells at his children without really telling them that he loves them. That's authoritarian parents. You will obey my rules. But Freud At an age of 2, he wrote that he felt superior to his father. His father, an idiot. He said he felt this as early at the age of 2. Imagine that. Imagine thinking your father's an idiot as early as an age of 2. Like a 2-year-old thinking, man, that dad, dumb. Maybe some of you don't have to imagine. Maybe some of you share this experience with Freud, but I think it's relatively unique to be looking down at your father at an age of 2. And his mother was married at 20 to her 40-year-old husband. So this is 20 years difference between the mother and father. And she was described as very attractive and slender. We'll talk about that later on. But yes, there was an emphasis on her looks by Sigmund Freud. We'll talk more about that coming up as well. But I also want to talk about the siblings, right? So here's a quote before we get into siblings. A quote that says, "A man who has been the indisputable favorite of his mother keeps for life the feeling of a conqueror, that confidence of success that often induces real success." And I'm going to read this again, but I'm only going to emphasize the important parts of this quote. The important parts are a man who's the favorite of his mother keeps for life confidence, and this induces real success. This quote is by Sigmund Freud himself. And what is he saying here? That's what I want you to ask yourself. What is Sigmund Freud saying when he says a man who's been the indisputable favorite of his mother? He's saying very directly, you know who the best people are in the world? I'll tell you who the best people are in the world. They're the men that was a mother's favorite. Basically, he's saying mama's boys. If you're a mama's boy, you have the potential to be one of the best people the planet has ever seen. If you're not a mama's boy, sorry, probably not going to be that fantastic. So Freud wrote of his passionate and sexual attachment to his mother. Now already, talking to Sigmund Freud, we're only like 5 minutes into this history, and we're already talking about something pretty interesting about Freud. He talked about how he was sexually attracted to his mother in great lengths. He admitted openly, I would like to have sex with my mother. But let's move on and talk about his siblings. Now, he was the firstborn of his father's second marriage. So he had 2 older half-brothers, which were already adults, because remember, there was a 20-year difference between his mother and his father. So when his mother and father got married, his 2 older brothers were already out of the house. And so he didn't have too much of a relationship with them. But he had 7 younger siblings. He was one of 8. He had 5 sisters. That's a lot of sisters. And 2 brothers. One of which died at age 2, if I remember correctly. And he used to blame himself for his younger brother's death because he thought his younger brother was stealing his fame. And when his younger brother died, he felt guilty. Oh my goodness, I caused this. And Freud later wrote, it wasn't until his middle age that he realized, oh, my brother didn't die because of me. There's so many stories here in the history of Sigmund Freud, and it's hard not to tell all of them. I gotta keep it light, gotta talk to the most important things, because I could teach an entire course about psychoanalysis and Sigmund Freud's life. But let's keep it tight and keep moving on. So imagine you're the oldest, a lot of sisters, and basically 1 brother. Now, was Freud a mama's boy? Freud is considered to be history's greatest mama's boy, or at least one of them. Freud got all this special treatment. He got his own bedroom where all the other children had to share bedrooms and whatnot. And his sisters, if they were making any noise, they'd be kicked out of the house if little Siggy Freud was studying or wanted the house being quiet. His mom went out of the way to make sure that he got a whole bunch of special attention and special privileges that his sisters did not get. One of these included the oil lamp, because keep in mind, this is the 1800s, gas lamp era. So they had this very valuable oil lamp. Think of like Aladdin and the genie. And he got to use that. And, oh man, this is embarrassing. Apparently Skype is open. But Freud got to use that oil lamp, and no one else did, not even the father of the house. So he got very special treatment. Long story short, mama's boy galore, right? He eventually studied to be a physician, as most people did. But here's one thing that's interesting is he wanted to be famous. This is a boy. Sigmund Freud was a child. When someone asked, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? He would say, I want to be famous. He didn't know how he was going to be famous, but he went towards science. So he studied the spinal cord of fish and studied the testes of eels and thought that would bring him some fame. So even at a very early age, he's studying to become a physician, but he's already doing a whole bunch of research. But then his first opportunity for real fame came around, and that came around when he discovered cocaine. Well, that's the timer. I'm over 10 minutes, so I gotta shut this down before I go on. Next time, in the next video of Sigmund Freud, we're gonna talk about Freud and his cocaine fame. Bum, bum, bum. All right, how do I stop this thing?